Hiya folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Doctor Who's 60th anniversary. The anniversary's finally arrived, and on Saturday the 25th of November 2023, the first of three specials entitled The Star Beast was aired by the BBC. This event was hotly anticipated for numerous reasons. It saw the return of showrunner Russell T Davies, the creative who oversaw what could be argued as the show's most mainstream and popular years in terms of mass audience reaction and viewership. The 60th anniversary also saw the return of fan favourite Dr. David Tennant to play the titular role for the specials, alongside another fan favourite character, Donna Noble, played by Catherine Tate. Another reason for high fan anticipation was due to the redirection that Doctor Who has taken since 2017. After then showrunner Stephen Moffat left the series alongside then Dr. Peter Capaldi, writer Chris Chibnall took the creative reins of the show. It was also announced that that era would introduce the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker. This was a controversial and divisive time for Doctor Who and its viewership. The introduction of themes and ideology that aligned with the BBC's policy of DIE, diversity, equity and inclusion, also created division amongst audience members. Some of this reaction was due to a portion of the audience not agreeing with the socio-political angle of these themes and ideologies. Others didn't have any particular issues with these ideologies, in some cases actually agreeing with them on a fundamental level. However, they did take issue with the way in which these ideologies were presented. In this case, some viewers argued that the presentation of said ideology was blunt, heavy-handed, ill-informed, lacked nuance, borderline socio-political extremism, and perhaps most importantly of all, completely disingenuous, i.e. not being done for right or real reasons. One other issue raised in this controversial era of Doctor Who was the quick realisation that the quality of writing, acting and production on display in the show had become a mere shadow of its former glory. What was even more baffling was that the show had addressed socio-political issues on numerous occasions before this particular era, and very few fans of the show had taken issue with them. Fans had in fact lauded them as another quality hallmark of the show. The reason? They were handled the right way, through intelligent, thought-provoking and subtle writing. You also felt that the writers genuinely cared about presenting the issues, as opposed to proverbially ticking boxes on a checklist compiled by somebody who, in their heart of hearts, didn't truly care about said issues and just wanted to shout a lot of inane socio-political dogma and probably had more teeth than brain cells. I watched with horror when the new era of Doctor Who unfolded. After all, I was, by 2017, an avid fan of the show. What had actually happened to my beloved show? I had several knee-jerk reactions at the time, reactions that I even surprised myself with, as I'm usually quite a calm, level-headed and easygoing person. Through my exposure to alternative knowledge, I have come to realise that based emotional reactions often come from a very negative place, and, even when they don't, will regularly end up taking you to such a place. Hence why I've reached a place in my life where I always try to start from a position of levity and calm in my emotional reactions. Something very sinister was happening here, not on my part I must stress, but I will come to that in a moment. As for my Doctor Who emotional reaction, it was something of a bizarre trip. Initially I was left in disbelief and confusion. What had gone wrong? How was this allowed to happen? Merchandising sales for the show began to trail off. Clearly the financial profitability of the show didn't seem to matter to the BBC, although that has never really been much of an issue for the BBC, seeing as how people are taxed by the government to pay for it, whether they want it or not. But still, a so-called media company not caring about extra profit? Who'd have thunk it? Doctor Who's audience viewing figures gradually began to decline and eventually plummeted to an almost history of the show all-time low. Yet again, nobody behind the scenes of this show seemed to care. All the issues I've noted here about the change in direction of the show continued apace. Doctor Who's then showrunner Chris Chibnall then decided to throw out the established historical canon of the show by stating that the first Doctor was not, in fact, William Hartnell, followed by Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee and so on. There'd actually been innumerable numbers of doctors. The first batch was indeed a bunch of ethnic and gender diverse children who had been brutally murdered by their adopted mother type, Tecteun, a psychopathic female scientist hell-bent on exploiting their regenerative powers. Whatever you might make of the quality of the writing of this scenario in the show, not to mention the acting of the cast in said events, the sheer contempt it showed for the history of the show, and by extension its loyal and dedicated fan base, was staggering. My reaction at that point briefly changed to anger, a very emotional reaction from me indeed. Soon after I switched to a mocking perspective. I often go to a place of humour when faced with incredulity. It's sometimes best to just laugh when things get too absurd. Eventually I began to just not care about it anymore. I was done with Doctor Who. My interest in where it had gone post 2017 was zero. In my mind, just prior to his regeneration, Peter Capaldi's Doctor, replete with glowing hands, had just simply wandered off into the snowy wilderness and walked into history. Job done. The end. In another time, I would have been very excited about what was to come for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. Jodie Whittaker's Doctor was gone. Tick. Chris Chibnall's writing and showrunning was done. Tick. Russell T Davies, a writer with track record for intelligent, thought-provoking, nuanced and subtle material, was back. If anybody could put socio-political allegories into Doctor Who in a meaningful, intelligent and non-offensive way, it would be him. Another tick. He was also a massive Doctor Who fan who cared about the integrity of the show and its fans. Another tick. David Tennant was back as the Doctor. Tick. Donna Noble, my favourite companion, was back. Tick. Gone was the gritty, dark and low production value of the Chibnall era, with all the trailers looking bright, sharp and colourful again. Another tick. Composer Murray Gold was back. Cue triumphant music. Literally. Tick. The list went on. But why was I still done with Doctor Who? Why couldn't I care less? This is where all the years of alternative knowledge research creeps in. I know the score, I know the agendas in the media, and they aren't the ones that people think they are. They're rarely talked about, they are altogether sinister and disturbing, and like the rabbit hole, they run deep. Curiosity of the so-called method was what finally drew me to tune into the first special of the Doctor Who 60th anniversary. As a researcher, I needed to see what was going to play out, how, and fully document it. I'd already been given a generic heads up by a BBC contact I have about what would take place. I was ready. Before I get into what is going on, I need to address what I call the proxy agenda regarding Doctor Who. At present, all the contention regarding Doctor Who is built upon public reaction to and debate about DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion in the show, and the quality, integrity of the writing. This has generated a three-way reaction online. The first is from those people who are currently lauding the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. They may be absolutely loyal to the Death fans who will sing its praises till the cows come home. It doesn't matter how bad it gets, it will always be fantastic to them. Within the pro camp, you will have those who praise the 60th anniversary for the DEI content. I will come to that particular bugaboo in a moment. Those viewers may be fans of both Doctor Who and DEI content, or just fierce proponents of the latter. Nevertheless, both will praise the show all the same. The second reaction is a critical one. The motivation here will vary. They may be viewers who have grown to hate the creative direction of Doctor Who. They may take issue with the quality of the writing or how it's being written. They may even take issue with DEI content in the media full stop. They may not actually have an issue whatsoever with DEI in particular, but believe that the current way it is being incorporated into the media isn't working, or it could be done better, or is too heavy-handed or disingenuous, and so on. Then there's the third reaction, and you've got to smile at these people, screaming from the rooftops from one side of the socio-political argument to the other. Their issue is usually DEI, although not always, again from one side of the argument to the other. They may genuinely care about DEI and may care about Doctor Who. They may loathe DEI and may loathe Doctor Who, but there's one thing that they all care about equally: clickbait, views, likes, subscribers, and ultimately making money. You know what? I don't actually have a fundamental issue with these people. Just do us a favour of clearly signposting what your prime motivator is. If you need to pretend that you like or hate something, so be it. Even if you do, just add the disclaimer that you also really want to make a crap load of money and we're good. I don't blame anybody for trying to earn a living, especially nowadays. Just try and be honest about it. All the three-way reaction is indicative of a trap, a lure, a massive piece of agenda-driven misdirection. Let's lay it out here. Prior to the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, the BBC's Children in Need event televised a short Doctor Who minisode where David Tennant's Doctor visits Skaro, home of the Daleks, and meets Dalek inventor Davros during the early days of their creation. Davros was immortalised by his appearance, being from the waist down encased in a Dalek shell. Many people labelled this as a wheelchair, although technically this was his life support system. In the Children in Need special, Davros is seen without his life support apparatus, with his legs and walking about. Most fans believe that they were getting a glimpse of the character pre-injury, and thus sans life support. Turns out this wasn't the motivation here at all. In a behind-the-scenes interview, Russell T Davies said, "We had long conversations about bringing Davros back because he's a fantastic character. Time and society and culture and taste has moved on, and there's a problem with the Davros of old in that he's a wheelchair user who is evil, and I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had problems with that, of associating disability with evil, and trust me, there's a very long tradition of this in the media. I'm not blaming people in the past at all, but the world changes, and when the world changes, Doctor Who has to change as well." Fan reaction was immediately divisive from some quarters, including some fans who were wheelchair users, such as the YouTuber Scottish Davros, who were really angry that issues of disability had been so grossly misrepresented by Doctor Who. They were also gutted that, in line with what RTD had said, they were probably never going to get the classic version of Davros in Doctor Who ever again. They also had never looked at Davros in the way that RTD claimed people do nowadays. Further, when people took to social media to discuss their thoughts on the Davros situation, RTD began replying to fans with insults such as poor baby and tough. There's something of an irony here in this, given that back in 2009, Russell T Davies brought the life support bound Davros back to the show and said that fundamentally there was nothing wrong with the character. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's move on now to the broadcast of the first 60th anniversary special of Doctor Who. Again, reaction was divisive and wide-ranging. For some, the issues were in the inclusion of a transgender actor and character, the subjects of disability, pronouns and non-binary ideology. There was also the insulting of the main character, David Tennant's Doctor, for not using correct pronouns, lacking intelligence and not being a woman. This is actually misdirection, and again, I will come to what is really going on shortly. More tempered reaction to the episode highlights the quality, or lack thereof, in the writing of the episode. I actually get where people are coming from with this argument. Watching the episode, I actually thought, perhaps foolishly, that the socio-political issues raised in the episode weren't being handled too badly. It wasn't overly preachy or heavy-handed for much of the episode, although better writing could have raised the episode to a higher level of thoughtfulness and engagement. That all went out the window in the last 10 minutes or so when RTD decided to have some characters figuratively and literally shout at and insult portions of the audience. But again, this is misdirection. Regarding how a writer and broadcaster treats their audience and fans of a show, it's always better to sweeten your viewers with a little honey rather than poisoning the proverbial well. It doesn't even need to be sweet. People don't like having their intelligence insulted, and they don't like being told they are wrong, even if sometimes they are. People's worldviews are ingrained through multiple aspects of their lives. It can be very hard to get people to think outside the proverbial box if they are so completely indoctrinated by any manner of dogmatic belief systems. People don't like to be preached to, shouted at or insulted. However, if you approach people on a level footing, gently invite them into relatable thinking and present your ideas calmly and thoughtfully, many good things can often come of this. Back in the mid-1990s, Ronald D. Moore wrote an incredible episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine called Rejoined. The episode told the story of Jadzia Dax encountering a lost love from her past. What makes this story unique is that Dax's species, the Trill, are a joined species of host and symbiote. The symbiote can pass to any host of any gender, meaning that the Trill are effectively transgender and non-binary. Dax's encounter with a love from the life of a previous host sets the stage for a thoughtful and heartbreaking multifaceted LGBTQ+ story that treats every audience member with intelligence and respect. It is never once preachy or heavy-handed, and 30 years later remains, at least in my opinion, one of the very best televisual examples of this kind of story. Even today, Ronald D. Moore showruns the Apple TV series For All Mankind with the same attitude and vision. The series showcases DEI done the right way, with a plethora of representation in its scripts, its cast and production crew. Unsurprisingly, Moore does not get the credit he rightly deserves, and I have often read online, by the more ignorant folk of the world, that Moore does not deserve it because he is white, straight and a man. Go figure. Although he may have changed his perspective more recently, I'm not sure if he has, I'm often reminded of something former Doctor Who showrunner Stephen Moffat said a few years ago when he was interviewed for a Jon Pertwee Blu-ray box set. He said, "If the Doctor was only one thing, he'd only appeal to those people, but the Doctor is all those things. And if you happen to be a high old Tory, well, so's the Doctor. If you happen to be a revolutionary, well, so's the Doctor. If you happen to be a bit of a macho man, so's the Doctor. If you happen to like wearing cravats and have a remarkably limp wrist, so's the Doctor. You know, I mean, he's all those things at once. What's wrong with that? That's absorbing all the best values of everything and making him into one person. The Doctor has to, because this is the mass appeal show. He has to appeal to all sides of the argument. You can't just be the left-wing show or the right-wing show. You can't. You've got to appeal to everything. So the Doctor is simultaneously a complete pacifist, absolutely against war, and works for a military organisation. The Doctor is a habitual revolutionary, who's very clear that he's in charge. He can style himself to a man of the people all he wants in his sort of hippie Jon Pertwee way, but he's really expecting somebody to get him some tea. He's always starting a fight. He's a peace-loving man. He wanders the universe looking for trouble, and I think that character gives him a broad appeal. Oh, for simpler times, eh? Here Moffat sums up what Doctor Who is and the potential for what it can always be for its audience at any given point in time. So why isn't it doing it now? Why, despite claims of DEI, is it more divisive than ever? Where did the insults and preaching come from, and where did the intelligence and thoughtfulness go? Is it RTD? No, it isn't. Russell T Davies is more than capable of presenting socio-political issues without resulting to what he did in the 60th anniversary specials. Case in point, in the book The Writer's Tale, Russell T Davies said Queer as Folk is a massively political drama, and yet barely a political speech is made, not directly. Every word is loaded, every scene is about a place of gay men in the world. You could argue that it's entirely political, and it's my politics. It's all me, me, me. Of course, I'm aware of the politics with the cheap, easy lines, the massive weapons of destruction reference in Doctor Who episode World War III. But that barely counts. It's quick satire, hardly profound. More often I prefer a slyer approach. It boils down to that line in Tooth and Claw, my favourite line in the whole series, where Queen Victoria says, "The core I know, Diamond. It is said that those who ever own it must surely die." And the Doctor says, well, that's true of anything if you wait long enough. Nice gag, fast, harmless, but actually under that it's lethal. That's what I really think about a ton of things. That's the whole belief system trashed, and I was conscious of that. I wanted to write that line. I was glad that I thought of a way of putting it so precisely, because it wasn't the time for a polemic. I say the process is inevitable, but also I do think it's your job as a writer to say something about the world. Why else are you writing? I can't think of a script in which I haven't done that. I'm being disingenuous if I imply that it's accidental, because I look for those chances. I create them. In more recent years, Russell T Davies wrote the short series Years and Years, about a family whose lives unfold in traumatic ways against a backdrop of huge world events and upheaval. I do have a few quibbles with the show, such as the transhumanism angle, how it puts down so-called conspiracy theorists in its earlier episodes, and seems to eerily foreshadow, in great detail I might add, the events that happened in the real world in 2020 before they even happened, actually as he did in the 4th season of Torchwood Miracle Day as well. That said, that series had DEI written all over it. It did it in a thoughtful, intelligent and genuine way. It felt sincere, as did all the characters and the various lives and lifestyles they led. So what went wrong? And here comes the rabbit hole. Some people online have talked about the change in Doctor Who being a result of increased socio-political ideology and the BBC and Disney. The two have combined to financially and ideologically take the show forward from this point onwards. But this barely scratches the surface. Many of my media sources, including prominent ones in both BBC and Disney, have confirmed that the entire media is now engaged in full spectrum psychological and psychotronic worldview warfare against the mass population. This may sound staggering to many and even conspiratorial to some, but the facts remain that this is real. I've heard many insider accounts, I have seen evidence that they share with me privately, and I've even gathered a wealth of my own evidence, which is actually incredibly readily available in the public domain online. The current muddling of DEI in the media is a smokescreen, as are many other socio-political ideological paradigms presented in the media. What we have is what one of my contacts calls 2 + 2 = 5 phenomenon. Although hardly an original way of describing it, the term is apt. What we are seeing is not about making the world a better place for various groups of people. It is about creating innumerable disparate groups of people and pitting them all against each other to create threats to the fabric of society left, right and centre. When we see one group of people diametrically opposed to another, demonising and spitting at each other, we are seeing the effects of chaos creation. Moreover, these people become so entrenched in defending their positions that they do not stop to see who is really driving this. We can readily point to money sources, things like BlackRock, Vanguard and various sundry of moneyed elite types around the world. But the more important question is why? If you are a fan of classic science fiction and the dystopian genre, you will readily recognise scenarios where characters live in a world where they are terrified to think, terrified to speak, they can't trust anybody, even their closest loved ones, where they are paranoid that they are constantly being watched and listened to by ominous sources, where the threat of social ostracism is all around, where financial ruin and imprisonment is a common outcome for merely speaking a word. All of these things are desired real-world outcomes for numerous elite types and entities that exist today. It isn't so much of a science fiction paradigm anymore, it's science fact. In order to create this world, you need to create the climate for it. The tried and proven way to do this is through culture creation. To do this, Fake paradigms must be manufactured but cannot overtly be seen to be fake or manufactured. Time is spent shaping the paradigm, drip feeding it to the masses, measuring reaction to it and belief in it. Can you convince huge numbers of people that something unreal is real? 2 + 2 = 5. I've documented an earlier media version of this process at great length in my book Media Psyop, the 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Today, culture creation happens exclusively via online and broadcast media. However, it is nudged and spearheaded by social scientists who are implanted all over the media. Sometimes their fellow employees don't even know that these people are social scientists, as they have cover jobs in the media to hide what they are really doing. Skeptics will say that if this was true, we'd know about it through whistleblowers. Well, we do. My media contacts know about it. They can't openly broadcast what they know. For one, there are no platforms with a large enough outreach who would share this insight because these platforms are in on it too. These whistleblowers also face constant threats against their careers and livelihood. In one case, they even had an actual threat made against their life. That is how serious all this is. My BBC contact has revealed to me that this sinister agenda is driving what is currently happening with Doctor Who. They've also made it clear to me that almost all the people involved with the show do not realise what is really going on, probably not even Russell T Davies. From his perspective, he genuinely believes he's doing some good, spreading various messages to the public via the show. However, he no doubt knows that the way that message has to be delivered has been intentionally straitjacketed by high-ups in the corporation and Disney. They have to be disingenuous because if they weren't, and the message was inserted the right way, people would embrace it everywhere and would pretty much stop lunging at each other's throats and live happily side by side. Let's not forget that Russell T Davies is also a television writer who likes fame, fortune, control and ego stroking. In his own words, he once said, "I'm at the high end of the most expensive area of one of the most insecure, public, high-flown, backstabbing industries in the UK. So I suppose it's kind of disingenuous to say that I'm a nice man, and yet I think I am, but I can't be." Pretty much speaks for itself, doesn't it? Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. If you're interested in my alternative knowledge research, you can check out my books. They're available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com, the links to which are in the description for this video. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.